Commander Vila had spent her entire life fighting. She was born on a warship, raised in battle camps, and earned her first scar before she could walk properly. Her species, the Keth, were warriors above all else. They measured a person's worth by how many enemies they had killed and how many battles they had survived. Vala had done both more times than she could count. She stood 7 feet tall. Her skin was the color of deep purple, covered in small scales that acted like natural armor. Her muscles were thick and powerful, built from decades of combat training. When she walked into a room, soldiers straightened their backs and avoided her eyes. When she gave orders, entire fleets moved to obey. She was one of the most respected commanders in the Keth Imperial Fleet, and she had earned every bit of that respect through blood and sacrifice. So when the Galactic Council told her she had to marry a human for peace, she felt like someone had stabbed her in the heart. The war between the Keth Empire and the Human Federation had lasted for 15 years. Millions had died on both sides. Finally, both governments agreed that peace was better than more death. But peace needed to be sealed with something stronger than words on paper. The council decided that a marriage between a high-ranking Keth officer and a human diplomat would show the galaxy that both species were serious about ending the conflict. Vila was chosen because of her fame. The humans sent a man named Taiho. She first saw him when his transport ship docked with her warship. She stood in the landing bay with her officers, all of them in full battle armor, trying to look as intimidating as possible. She wanted this human to understand from the very first moment that she was not happy about this arrangement. The transport door opened, and Taiho walked out. He was small. That was the first thing Vila noticed. He barely reached her shoulder, and his build was slim and lean. He had black hair that was neatly combed, and dark eyes that seemed calm and peaceful. He wore simple clothes and soft colors, nothing like the armor and weapons the Keth wore. In his hands, he carried a wooden box and a bag of books behind her. Vila heard one of her officers laugh quietly. She understood why. This man looked like he would break if someone pushed him too hard. Taiho stopped in front of her and bowed deeply. It was a formal bow, the kind humans used to show respect. "Commander Vela," he said. His voice was soft and gentle. "I am honored to meet you. I have read much about your victories. I hope we can build something good together." Vela stared at him. She had killed enemies twice his size with her bare hands. She had survived explosions, poison, and torture. And now she was supposed to call this soft creature her husband. "You will stay out of my way," she said coldly. "This marriage is politics. It means nothing to me personally. Do you understand?" If her words hurt him, he did not show it. He simply nodded, that calm expression never changing. "I understand, Commander. I will do my best not to cause you any trouble." He bowed again and followed the officer assigned to show him to their shared quarters. Vila watched him go, feeling anger and shame burning in her chest. Her officers said nothing, but she could feel their judgment. They were wondering how their mighty commander had fallen so low in the days that followed. Vela did her best to ignore Taiho completely. She woke up early and left their quarters before he was awake. She spent her days on the bridge, training with her soldiers or planning military operations. She returned late at night when he was already asleep, but sometimes she could not avoid him entirely. She noticed that he spent most of his time in the ship's library, reading old Keth history books and learning their language. He was surprisingly good at languages, she had to admit. Within 2 weeks, he could speak basic Keth well enough to have simple conversations with the crew. She also noticed that he woke up very early each morning to practice some kind of exercise in the cargo bay. She saw him once through a window when she was walking to the bridge. He was moving slowly, his arms flowing through the air in gentle patterns, his eyes closed. It looked like dancing, or maybe some kind of relaxation ritual. Whatever it was, it seemed useless. There was no power in those movements, no aggression. Just slow, peaceful motion. Her officers mocked him for it. They called him the dancer and the sleeping warrior behind his back. Some of them made jokes about how lucky Vela was to have such a fearsome husband. She never defended him. Part of her agreed with them. One evening, she returned to her quarters earlier than usual because a meeting had been cancelled. She found Taiho sitting at a small table, brewing some kind of hot drink that smelled like flowers and grass. Beside him was a long wooden case she had never paid attention to before. "What is in that box?" she asked, surprising herself by speaking to him directly. Taiho looked up and smiled. It was a warm smile, without any anger or resentment despite how she had treated him. "A family treasure," he said. "It belonged to my grandfather and his grandfather before him. It has been in my family for many generations." "What kind of treasure?" "Perhaps I will show you someday," he said. "When the time is right." Vela frowned. She did not like mysteries. But she also did not want to seem too interested in anything this weak human had to offer. "Keep your secrets," she said, and walked away to her sleeping area. She did not know it then, but that wooden case would change everything she believed about strength and weakness. She did not know that inside it lay a blade that had tasted blood for 600 years. And she did not know that the gentle man brewing tea in her quarters carried within him a fire that had been burning since long before humanity reached the stars. All she knew was that she had been given a husband she did not want, and she planned to ignore him until the day she died. She would learn, eventually, how wrong she was about everything. 3 months passed since Taiho arrived on Vela's warship. In that time, nothing much had changed between them. Vela still avoided him. Taiho still spent his days reading, brewing tea, and doing his strange, slow exercises. The crew still laughed at him behind his back. Life continued as if the marriage meant nothing at all. Then came the summit at Outpost Kirin. The outpost was a massive space station floating at the edge of 3 different territories. The Keth, the Drava, and the Vrex had formed an alliance against a common enemy called the Dominion. The Dominion was a ruthless empire that conquered and destroyed everything in its path. Only by working together could the 3 species hope to survive. But alliances between warriors were never easy. Old hatreds ran deep, and trust was hard to build. The summit was supposed to help the 3 species understand each other better. There would be meetings, ceremonies, and a great feast where leaders could talk and share food. Vela was ordered to attend, and diplomatic rules said she had to bring her husband. She hated the idea. Bringing Taiho meant showing him to other warriors. It meant letting them see the weak human she had been forced to marry. But she had no choice. Orders were orders. They arrived at the outpost on a cold morning. Vela wore her finest armor, polished until it shone like a mirror. Taiho wore simple formal clothes in dark blue, with no weapons or armor at all. Walking beside her, he looked like a servant rather than a commander's husband. The Drava delegation was already there. The Drava were reptile people, even taller and more muscular than the Keth. Their scales were green and brown, and their eyes were yellow with thin black lines down the center. They were proud warriors who believed that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. Their leader was General Morak, a legendary fighter who had won 100 battles. He was 8 feet tall, with scars covering most of his face. When he saw Vela and Taiho approaching, his lips pulled back to show rows of sharp teeth. "Commander Vela," he said, his voice like rocks grinding together. "I have heard much about you. They say you are the fiercest of the Keth." Vela nodded respectfully. "General Morak, your reputation is also well known." Morak's yellow eyes moved to Taiho. He looked the human up and down like someone examining a strange insect. "And this is your husband?" "The human?" Yes, this is Tayo. He is a diplomat representing the Human Federation. Morak laughed. It was not a friendly laugh. It was the kind of laugh that came before violence. A diplomat. Of course. Humans are good at talking, are they not? They hide behind their words and their machines because their bodies are useless. He stepped closer to Taiho, towering over the smaller man. Tell me, little human, have you ever killed anything with your hands? Have you ever felt blood on your skin? The hallway went quiet. Other delegates and soldiers stopped to watch. Viola felt her face grow hot with shame. Te Ho looked up at the massive Drava general. His expression did not change. He remained calm, like a pond without any ripples. I am only a scholar and diplomat, General, Taiho said politely. Fighting is not my path. I leave such glory to warriors like yourself. Morak's laugh grew louder. His soldiers joined in, their harsh voices echoing off the metal walls. A scholar! Do you hear that? The mighty Commander Vela married a scholar. He turned to Vela with mock pity in his eyes. I feel sorry for you, Commander. When the Dominion comes, this creature will hide behind your legs and cry for mercy. Vela wanted to defend herself. She wanted to say that the marriage was not her choice, but doing so would make her look even weaker. So she said nothing. Taiho bowed his head slightly. Perhaps you are right, General. I hope I never have to find out. Morak snorted with disgust and walked away, his soldiers following. Their laughter continued for a long time. That night, there was a great feast in the main hall. Hundreds of delegates from all three species sat at long tables, eating and drinking and talking. Viola sat at a place of honor with Taiho beside her. She could feel eyes on them all evening. She heard whispers and quiet laughter. The story of Morak's mockery had spread quickly. Everyone knew about the weak human husband who could not fight. Vila drank more than she should have. By the time they returned to their guest quarters, her blood was burning with anger and shame. The moment the door closed behind them, she turned on Taiho. You humiliated me, she growled. You stood there like a coward and let him insult you. You made me look weak in front of everyone. Taiho was setting out his tea equipment, his movements slow and careful. I answered truthfully. I am a diplomat. Fighting is not what I do. Because you cannot fight. Because you are weak and useless. Taiho paused. For just a moment, something changed in his eyes. It was like looking through a crack into a dark room and seeing fire burning inside. Then it was gone, and his face was calm again. You did not choose this marriage, he said quietly. Neither did I, but I will not pretend to be something I am not just to impress warriors who only understand violence. That is all you can say? That is your excuse? Taiho finished preparing his tea. He poured a cup and held it in both hands, the steam rising around his face. I understand you are angry, Commander. You have every right to be. But I have learned in my life that the loudest strength is not always the truest strength. Perhaps someday you will understand what I mean. Vela wanted to scream at him. She wanted to grab his tea and throw it against the wall. But something in his calm eyes stopped her. There was no fear there, no submission. Just patience, like a mountain waiting for a storm to pass. She turned and walked to her sleeping area without another word. In the darkness. She lay awake for a long time, hating him. Hating herself. Hating everyone who had put her in the situation. She had no way of knowing that in just a few hours, everything would change. She had no way of knowing that the weak human sleeping in the next room carried within him a power older than starships. Older than empires. Older than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The night was quiet and peaceful. It would not stay that way for long. The attack came in the dead of night. Vela was pulled from sleep by the screaming of alarms. Red emergency lights flashed across the ceiling. The floor shook beneath her as explosions rocked the station. She was on her feet in seconds, grabbing her weapons and armor. Years of training made her movements automatic. Plasma rifle, energy blade, chest plate, arm guards. By the time the second explosion hit, she was ready for war. Report. She shouted into her communication device. The voice that answered was filled with fear. Commander. The Dominion. They were hiding among the station staff. They have disabled our shields and opened the docking bays. Enemy ships are pouring in. Vila cursed. The Dominion were known for their infiltrators. They would plant soldiers disguised as workers months or even years before an attack. When the time was right, those hidden soldiers would strike from within while their fleet attacked from without. She ran toward the command center, her boots thundering against the metal floor. All around her, chaos had erupted. Station workers ran screaming in every direction. Gunfire echoed from distant corridors. The smell of smoke and burning metal filled the air. She found her first enemies at an intersection near the central hub. Dominion shock troops, massive creatures with 4 arms and bodies covered in dark red armor. They were killing everyone they found, soldiers and civilians alike. Vila did not hesitate. She raised her plasma rifle and fired. The first shock trooper fell with a hole burned through its chest. The second turned toward her, raising a heavy blade. She ducked under its swing and drove her energy blade into its throat. The third charged at her with all 4 arms swinging. She rolled aside, came up behind it, and shot it twice in the back. 3 down. But she could hear more coming. She fought her way through corridor after corridor. Bodies lay everywhere, both enemy and ally. The station was being overrun. There were simply too many Dominion soldiers and too few defenders ready to fight back. Then a message flashed across her neural link. A direct alert from the station's security system. Diplomatic quarters breached. Human asset location unknown.teho.vila stopped running. For a moment, she did not know what to do. The command center was ahead of her. That was where she was needed. That was where she could do the most good. But her husband was somewhere behind her, probably dead or about to die. She did not love him. She barely even liked him. But the thought of him being killed while she did nothing made her stomach turn. Whether she wanted to admit it or not, he was her responsibility. She turned and ran back toward the diplomatic wing. The corridors there were darker. Many of the lights had been destroyed. Vala moved carefully, her rifle raised, ready for anything. What she found made her stop breathing. Bodies lay scattered across the hallway floor. Dominion shock troops, elite soldiers marked by crimson armor, the deadliest fighters the enemy had. They were not just dead. They had been taken apart. Arms severed. Legs cut at the joints. Throats opened with surgical precision. This was not the work of plasma weapons or energy blades. The cuts were too clean, too precise. These soldiers had been killed by something much more personal. Vela moved forward slowly, stepping over the bodies. She counted 12, then 15, then 20. All dead. All killed by the same devastating skill. Then she saw him. Taiho stood at the center of the carnage. He was shirtless, his upper body covered in sweat and dark alien blood. In his hands was a sword unlike any weapon Vila had ever seen. It was not made of energy or plasma. It was made of metal, old metal, folded and shaped by hands that had died centuries ago. The blade caught the red emergency lights and seemed to glow with its own inner fire. 3 more. Dominion soldiers burst from a side corridor. Their weapons raised. Teho moved. Vala had trained in combat for 40 years. She had studied fighting styles from 100 different worlds. She had seen the best warriors in the galaxy do battle. She had never seen anything like this. Taiho did not fight like a Keth. He did not meet strength with strength, or try to overpower his enemies. He moved like water flowing around stones, like wind slipping through leaves. His body bent and twisted in ways that seemed impossible. His sword was everywhere at once, cutting through armor that should have been unbreakable. The first soldier died before it could complete its swing. The sword took off its head in a single clean motion. The second soldier fired its weapon. Taiho was not there anymore. He had moved somehow, appearing behind the creature and driving his blade up, through the gap in its armor at the neck. The third soldier turned to run. It managed 2 steps before Taiho's sword opened its back from shoulder to hip. 4 seconds. 3 elite soldiers. All dead. Taiho stood among the bodies, his chest rising and falling with deep breaths. Slowly, he turned to face Vila. His eyes were different now. The gentle calm was gone. In its place was something old and fierce, like a fire that had been burning since the beginning of time. "The command center has fallen," he said. His voice was steady despite everything. "I secured the civilian shelters before coming here. The enemy is trying to reach the reactor room. If they succeed, they will destroy the entire station." Vila stared at him. Her mind could not process what she was seeing. This was the same man who brewed tea and read poetry. The same man who bowed politely when warriors insulted him. The same man she had called weak and useless. "What are you?" She whispered. Taiho looked at the sword in his hands. Blood dripped from the ancient blade, but the metal itself remained clean and bright. "I am your husband," he said simply. "The rest can wait until later. Right now, we need to save this station." He held out his free hand toward her. "Will you fight beside me, Commander?" Vila looked at his hand. It was covered in blood, scarred from old wounds she had never noticed before. It was the hand of a warrior, not a scholar. Everything she thought she knew was wrong. She raised her own blade and nodded. "Lead the way." Together, they ran toward the reactor room, leaving death behind them and carrying more death ahead. The battle for Outpost Kiran had only just begun. They moved through the station like a storm. Vala had fought in many battles, but she had never fought like this. With Taiho at her side, everything felt different. They did not simply kill enemies. They flowed through them, around them, past them, leaving only silence and bodies behind. Between fights, as they ran through empty corridors or caught their breath behind locked doors, Vela asked questions. She needed to understand. "How long have you been able to do this?" she demanded as they pressed against a wall, waiting for a patrol to pass. "Since I was a child," Taiho answered. His breathing was calm and controlled. "My family has practiced this art for over 600 years. It is called Jiamdo, the way of the sword. 600 years. Long before humans left Earth. Long before we knew other species existed in the galaxy. My ancestors developed this fighting style to survive in a world that was violent and dangerous." The patrol passed. Taiho gestured, and they moved forward again. "But why hide it?" Vila asked. "Why let everyone think you were weak?" Taiho was quiet for a moment. They reached another intersection and stopped, listening for sounds of enemies. "My teachers believed that true strength should be hidden," he finally said. "Like a sword in its sheath. If you show your blade to everyone, they know exactly what you can do. They can prepare for you, counter you, find ways to defeat you. But if they think you have no blade at all, they lower their guard. They underestimate you. That sounds like cowardice, does it?" Taiho turned to look at her. "Or does it sound like wisdom? The blade that is always shown is always challenged. The blade that is hidden strikes when it is needed most." They heard shouting ahead and pressed forward. 4 Dominion soldiers were trying to break through a barricaded door. Behind that door, Vela knew, were civilians hiding from the attack. Taiho raised his sword. "There is another reason I hide my skill." He moved before Vela could respond. The first soldier turned just in time to see the blade coming. It did not have time to scream. Viola joined the fight, her energy blade humming as she engaged the second soldier. Its forearms swung at her with brutal force, but she had learned something from watching Taiho. She did not try to block the attacks directly. Instead, she moved around them, finding the gaps between the swings. Her blade found the soldier's throat. Taiho had already finished the other two. He stood among the bodies, not even breathing hard. The other reason, he continued, as if nothing had happened, is that I do not want to be a warrior. I became a diplomat because I believe in peace. I believe that words can solve problems better than violence. The sword is only for when words fail. He cleaned his blade with a cloth from his pocket. The motion was practiced, automatic. I hoped, he said quietly, that I would never have to use it. I hoped that I could go through my entire life without showing anyone what I can do. I wanted to be judged for my mind, not for my skill at killing. Veal watched him, seeing him truly for the first time. This man had hidden his greatest ability because he did not want it to define him. He had let warriors mock him, let his own wife treat him with contempt, all because he believed that killing should be a last resort, not a first response. She felt ashamed of everything she had said to him. You could have told me, she said. Would you have believed me? Or would you have demanded proof? He looked at her with those calm eyes. Would you have respected me for choosing peace, or would you have seen my choice as weakness? Vila could not answer. She knew what she would have done. She would have demanded to see him fight. She would have measured him by Keth standards, the only standards she knew. I was a fool, she said. No, you were raised to value one kind of strength. Your entire culture, your entire life, taught you that power means dominance and combat skill. It is not your fault that you believed what everyone told you was true. He started walking again, and she followed. But there are other kinds of strength, he continued. The strength to remain calm when others attack you. The strength to choose peace when violence would be easier. The strength to hide your power and use it only when innocent lives are at stake. They reached the corridor leading to the reactor room. The sounds of fighting were close now. Vela could hear Dominion soldiers giving orders, weapons firing, screams of pain. You hid your sword, she said. But now you have drawn it. Yes. Taiho's grip tightened on the ancient blade. Because people I care about are in danger. Because there are civilians behind that barricade who will die if we fail. Because sometimes, no matter how much you want peace, war finds you anyway. He looked at her. And because you are my wife. Even if you do not want to be. Even if you see me as a burden. I would die before I let anyone harm you. Vila felt something crack inside her chest. Not her bones or her armor. Something deeper. Something she had built around her heart a long time ago. I do not see you as a burden, she said. Not anymore. I see you as a warrior. A different kind of warrior than I am used to. But a warrior all the same. Taiho smiled. It was the same gentle smile he always wore. But now Vila understood what was behind it. Then let us finish this together, he said. They turned the corner and saw the reactor room entrance. A dozen Dominion soldiers guarded the door while technicians worked inside to override the safety systems. If they succeeded, the reactor would explode. The entire station and everyone on it would be destroyed. Vela raised her weapon. Taiho raised his sword. One more thing, he said softly. When we enter that room, stay close to me. Move when I move. Do not try to protect me. Let me protect you. I do not need protection. I know, but let me give it anyway. Consider it a wedding gift. Despite everything, Vila almost laughed. They charged together, blade and steel shining in the emergency lights. The final battle had begun. The fight in the reactor room would become legend. 12 Dominion soldiers. The deadliest warriors of a conquering empire. armed with advanced weapons and protected by the best armor their technology could create. Against them stood one human with an ancient sword, and one Keth commander with an energy blade. The soldiers saw them coming and laughed. 2 enemies against 12? This would be easy. They were wrong. Taiho moved first. He seemed to flow across the floor like smoke, appearing between enemies so fast that they could not track him. His sword sang as it cut through armor, through scales, through flesh and bone. He did not waste any movement. Every step placed him exactly where he needed to be. Every swing ended a life. Vila fought beside him, and she felt herself changing. Watching him move taught her things that no training ever had. She started to understand that combat was not just about power and aggression. It was about timing, positioning, and finding the spaces between heartbeats. The first 6 soldiers fell in seconds. The remaining 6 tried to form a defensive circle, covering each other with their weapons. It was a smart tactic against most enemies. Taiho was not most enemies. He broke their formation like water breaking through a dam. Where they expected him to be, he was not. Where they swung their weapons, he had already moved. His sword found every gap in their armor, every weakness in their stance. Vela took down 2 more, her blade guided by lessons she was learning in real time. The last 2 soldiers tried to surrender. They threw down their weapons and raised their arms. Taiho stopped, his sword still raised. "The technicians," he said, breathing hard. "Stop them." Vila ran to the reactor controls. 3 Dominion technicians were desperately trying to complete their sabotage. She killed 2 before they could react. The third turned and tried to hit the final activation switch. Taiho's sword flew across the room, spinning through the air with perfect accuracy. It struck the technician's hand before it reached the switch, pinning the creature to the console. The reactor remained stable. The station was saved. Relief flooded through Vila's body. She leaned against the console, her legs suddenly weak. Taiho walked across the room and pulled his sword from the console. He looked at the technician, who was screaming in pain. "You will live," he said calmly. "Someone will come to treat your wound. Be grateful that you are alive to feel it." He turned to Vila. His body was covered in cuts and bruises. Blood ran from a wound on his shoulder, but his eyes were still peaceful, still calm. "It is over," he said, and it was. The relief fleet arrived 2 hours later. They found a station that was damaged but standing. Most of the civilians had survived thanks to Taiho securing the shelters early in the attack. The Dominion assault had been completely stopped. General Morak was among the dead. He had died fighting, which the Drava would consider honorable. But many who survived whispered that he had been killed by the same soldiers he had mocked. Humans for fearing Dot in the days that followed. The story of the battle spread across the galaxy. Dot, the tale of the human who pretended to be weak. The ancient sword that cut through armor made to stop plasma fire. The diplomat who was actually a master of a fighting art that humans had practiced for over 6 centuries. Warriors from many species sent messages asking to study under Taiho. Leaders offered him positions of military command. News channels requested interviews. He refused them all. "I did not fight to become famous," he told Vela when they were finally alone. "I fought because innocent people were in danger. Because my wife was in danger." He paused. "Because I finally had something worth protecting." They were in their quarters on Vala's warship, heading back to Kethspace. The room was quiet. For the first time since their marriage, the silence between them felt comfortable instead of cold. "You kept calling me your wife," Vala said slowly. "Even when I treated you badly. Even when I said terrible things to you. Why?" Taiho sat down and began brewing tea. The same ritual he had performed every day since he arrived. "Because I hoped," he said, I hoped that one day you would see me for who I truly am. Not the weak human everyone thought I was. Not the deadly warrior I can become when necessary. Just me. A man who values peace, who loves history and poetry and tea, who happens to carry within him a skill passed down through generations. He poured 2 cups of tea and offered one to her. I wanted you to choose to know me. I did not want to force you by showing off my abilities. That would not have been real. Vila took the cup. The tea smelled like flowers and honey. She had never tried it before. She drank. It was good. I want to know you now, she said. The real you. All of you. Taiho smiled, that same gentle smile that she had once found infuriating. Now she understood what was behind it. Patience, hope, and a quiet, unshakable strength. Then we have much to teach each other, he said. I can teach you patience. I can teach you to see strength in unexpected places. I can teach you that power hidden is sometimes greater than power displayed. And what can I teach you? Taiho considered this. You can teach me to stop hiding completely. To let people see all of me, not just the parts I think are safe to show. He reached out and took her hand. His fingers were warm against her scaled skin. My teacher said the sword should stay in its sheath. But perhaps there is value in letting those who matter see the blade from time to time. Vila looked at their joined hands. Hers was large and purple, covered in warrior scars. His was smaller, marked with calluses from years of sword practice she had never noticed. Different, yet somehow they fit together. I was wrong about you, she said. I was wrong about what strength means. You were taught wrong. There is a difference. Either way, I want to learn better. Taiho squeezed her hand. Then we will learn together. As partners. As husband and wife. He paused. Perhaps one day as something more. Vela did not know what their future would hold. She did not know if she could truly change the belief she had carried her entire life. She did not know if the galaxy would ever stop. Being surprised by the gentle warrior who had saved an entire space station with an ancient sword. But she knew one thing for certain. She had been given a second chance to know this extraordinary man. And this time, she would not waste it. She lifted her cup of tea and touched it against his. To new beginnings, she said. To new beginnings, he agreed. Outside the window, stars streamed past as the warship flew through space. Somewhere ahead lay home, duty, and a future that neither of them could predict. But they would face it together, and that, Vela realized, was the greatest strength of all.